nothing y'all can do, y'all cannot control me. Brainstorm, y'all minds got a slow leak. Brainwaves crash, this is getting so deep. Everybody, every time I go speak, don't believe the hype, then it's what you gon' see. I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. There's no stopping us now. I can't be controlled, 'cause we're not in the crowd. I can't be controlled. You can't stop us right now. I can't be controlled. No, no, no. No, I can't be controlled. If I don't wanna be there, then it's time for me to go. Money is the motor, so if y'all don't even know there's nothing you can do to buy me, y'all are finally exposed. Hold up, man, you know that I'm honestly the GOAT, and I'm all good like I'm trying to be the Pope. If you talking money, then it's gotta be a joke, but if the money talks, I estimate it's gotta be a quote. Oh my God, man, you can't lie to me, I'll know. So really, if you try it, then you gotta be exposed. Headstrong, even when my mind is getting old, but even so, you need to know that no, I can't be controlled.
Live tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the start of another season of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series on RaceSpotTV. It'll all officially get underway in 2 weeks' time right here at the World Center of Racing for the season opening Daytona 250. However, tonight we set the grid for the first of 30 points races this year with a set of dual races here in Daytona Beach. As always, we're happy that you're with us on a Monday night with our producer downstairs, Hugo Luis and Nolan Rempel. My name is Evan Pasoko. Nolan, a little bit of a late start here tonight. Pole qualifying for the Daytona 250 is already in the books. We already know that Agnell Phillip and Connor Horn will start first and second for the season opener in 2 weeks' time. Nobody else, though, knows where they will start. So here tonight, they're going to find out in the dual races. There will also be a handful of drivers failing to qualify, so you need to make sure you're not finishing in the last one or two spots in this race if you want to be there in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, absolutely, and that means that these duels could have some even more intense racing than a good portion of the season opener in its entirety. Of course, that season opener is set at 100 laps around the World Center of Racing for the Daytona International Speedway. For the duels, though, 30 laps apiece, so you're going to have a lot of drivers that might be finding themselves a bit more desperate to get themselves at least a bit further up towards the top half of the field, since you don't have to be in the top half just to get into your way into that season opener.
There is no waiting until the next fuel run. You're going to be able to go right away. And again, it really comes down to two different objectives, right? Number one is, do you want to make the show, right? Because relatively speaking, and maybe statistically, Nolan, it's not difficult to not finish last or second to last, right? So that's the first thing. If you just want to play it safe, try not to finish last, you can go that route. But like we said, this also sets grid position for the Daytona 250 in 2 weeks' time. So the higher up you finish in your duel, the higher up you start in the 250. So that's where drivers are going to have to make a decision. Do they race for grid position versus just racing to not be eliminated?
Oh, absolutely, and I think that could prove to be a big factor as to how these races play on out. Obviously, not racing for pole position. That was already decided with the qualifying session earlier tonight, and a bit earlier tonight, I guess we should say. But they are still racing for third on back in this first duel, and 4th on back in Duel number 2. So you've still got yourself a lot of spots that are definitely going to be up for grabs. And as plate racing has definitely proven time and time again over these last few months and even the last few decades, starting position can be absolutely critical into having a good race, especially with these packages the way they are nowadays, where single file racing is far from the norm.
It's funny, a lot of drivers really believe in qualifying on these plate tracks, and then there's a small group of them that say they don't really care. That's why I think it's going to come down to a couple of different strategies, not only in the duel here tonight, but of course in 2 weeks when we get to that season opener. And as you mentioned, 2 duels on tap tonight, so these are all the drivers who were 3rd, 5th, 7th, etc., all the odd number drivers from that single car pole position qualifying that are in duel number 1, all of the even finishing position drivers. So those who qualified 2, 4, 6, etc. will be put down into duel number 2. Of course, Agnew Phillip best. He's locked into P1. Connor Horn second fastest. He's also locked into duel number 2. He is into the 250 Nolan. Agnew Phillip, I believe, is going to race here in duel number 1. So just because he's locked in doesn't mean he's going home. He's going to come out and have some fun here tonight. No need to worry about wrecking the race car because it's a sim.
Well, and of course, I think that is a very important thing to note, that Phillip is racing, because not only does he get to just come out here and just have a bit of fun, get that extra little bit of practice in when it comes to trying to set yourself up for the season opener. He's not going to be as focused when it comes to finishing position, so to speak, because he knows he's already secure on the front row. But this could be a very solid opportunity for Agnew Phillip to go out there and just try to see if maybe, just maybe, he could get himself a solid run and figure out how he wants to set up moves and potentially execute those moves come season opener in a couple of weeks.
Gonna end up being a long Monday night with us, and we're happy that you're with us at RaceSpotTV. The original plan was for the finishing positions from the single car pole position qualifying to set the grid positions for these duels as it was in years past. However, an issue with the iRacing UI system means that both of these duel races will have independent qualifying sessions. Nolan, I'm not expecting anything major to happen, right? These drivers just qualified in order on single car time, so I'm expecting these times to somewhat reflect what we saw in Daytona 250 pole qualifying, but Agnew Phillip bested them all with a fastest lap of a 50.537. But that was an afternoon qualifying session. Right now, we're just a little bit past 6 p.m. Eastern time. You can see the sun starting to dip behind the grandstands. The lights will be on by the time this duel is done, so maybe there's slight changes in the weather conditions will affect what is a very sensitive qualifying time when you're doing a solo lap at Daytona.
And those ever-changing conditions can definitely be the make or break point, in how a lap could play out. For example, one lap you could have a big headwind coming on down the back straightaway. The other lap around, you could find yourself with a massive tailwind, and those can be the difference factors in, those very crucial hundreds, thousands of a second. And qualifying when it comes to super speedways can be some of the tightest times on timing deltas there could possibly be, because a vast majority of drivers out there are going to be running the exact same lap times as each other. And of course, with this being once again fixed setups, that is of course going to mean that those changing conditions, as well as the line that some of these drivers might take, could prove to be the deciding factor in how this qualifying session plays out.
And for all of the twists and turns that we've already seen tonight, of course, all the drama between qualifying onto the front row and then now into the duels, just trying to qualify into the Daytona 250 at all, Nolan. One thing we've completely failed to mention so far is, of course, this is the debut for the NASCAR Next Gen car in official RSR competition. We have seen this RSR Cup Series evolve plenty over the years, way back when Landon Huffman won the inaugural championship back in 2012. So as this Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series enters its 11th straight year of competition, we now will have our third different generation of race car. They look a little bit different, obviously. The big, I think, topic of conversation amongst race fans has been primarily the numbers getting moved forward, which I think most of the drivers in the field have done on their virtual race cars as well. But as we get to the intermediate tracks, as we get to the short tracks over the course of the year, we'll talk more and more about those technical differences that make this next-gen car different than what we saw in the now retired Gen 6 car. But, I mean, mean, you hear it immediately. The tone of the engines right off the bat, totally different.
And the tone of the engines is definitely a big game changer. I think it's worth noting that the shape of the cars is a big game changer as well. And I have to say, huge fans of both of them. The cars sound amazing, and they also look amazing. And I've been taking a look at a few of the races in the past few weeks since these cars made their way into official iRacing competition. And I can safely say here, Evan, that these cars, they race just as well as they look. So we are in for a barn burner of a season ahead of us, and I think that could prove to make this possibly one of the most, if not the most, entertaining RSR Full Throttle Cup Series seasons that this league has ever seen.
And as I mentioned, that most of the drivers decided to slide those numbers forward. You can see not all of them have. That is the number 6 machineer, Thomas George, who's put a lap time down, currently 3rd on the board. Those qualifying times are all over on the left-hand side of your screen there. Several drivers as well, Nolan, which is something you could not do in Daytona 250 pole qualifying, but you can do here in the duels, is some drivers opting not to queue at all. They do not want to be up front racing. There are no quick repairs available if you have an incident. So right now, Andrew Freenosh, Matt Danson, James Ross, Sean Kalist, and Shane Parrish have all not put down a time in qualifying and likely will not do so here in the final 30 seconds.
And this could also be a very solid tactic that a lot of these drivers could even utilize a little bit further down the road in other races as well, like Talladega Superspeedway, for example. Sometimes it's best to just sit at the tail end of the field and just let things sort themselves out in front. But when it comes to Superspeedway racing with this package in particular, you have to be very, very careful about doing that. It does not take much for you to lose the draft of the cars in front, and from there, you're going to slip back like a stone in water.
And with that, the clock strikes 0 after much delay and anticipation. We are ready to take a look at your starting grid for Duel number 1. So Agnell Phillip is on pole for the 250. He is on pole for his heat race. A 53.43 means that he will bring us to the green flag alongside Tom Wetmore in second. Thomas George starts third tonight alongside Timothy Johnston, Jaron Winemaster, and Chris Rapel on row 3.
7th place will hold the likes of Joseph Tice with Dylan Parker beside him on row number 4. David Kalb is going to be in 9th place with Rhett McBride rounding out the top 10. Cody Harris is 11th with Nicholas Cohen rounding out row number 6.
One of the vets now for this series, Benazzi Major, returns for another year. He'll be alongside Sam Nieto's number 2 machine on row 7, and Kevin King, who made quite a splash in the Winter Series, will compete for a Full Throttle Cup Series championship this year. He starts alongside Shane Ewing. Daniel Everhart, 17th. Tom Morano, 18th. Those are all the drivers who took a time.
And then from there, it is Andrew Freenosh with Danson, Ross, Parrish, and Kalis to round out the 23-car field set for Duel number 1. 30 laps of racing coming on up in short order.
That is a look at your starting grid as we get set to embark on another Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series campaign. Just waiting on the field to be released from the pit lane, and we will go racing. Let's talk about the logistics for these dual races, Nolan. They will be 30 laps apiece. Caution flags are turned on, and if necessary, 3 attempts at a green and white checkered overtime restart if we so need them. I think we're just waiting on 1 or 2 cars to take to the grid. I'm not seeing the 42 of Matt Danson on track right now. Danson may be opting to start this race from pit road. Now the field officially rolls, so Danson will not make the grid and will likely start from pit road. Not a terrible idea, Nolan, if you're trying to avoid accidents, but if we go 30 laps caution-free, you're not catching up, so maybe a bit of a gamble.
A big gamble, and I have to say, one that I would not risk taking, considering you know that you are not going to be able to make it in if you finish stone dead last, which is where he's going to be starting at the moment.
And remember, with 23 drivers in this race, but Agnell Phillip is already locked in, which means that they were looking for the top 21 cars not named Agnell Phillip, so only one will go home. Again, statistically, pretty tough to be just that one car. Some drivers may play it super safe, simply try to focus on advancing to the Daytona 250. Other drivers will focus a lot more on their finishing position in this duel to better their grid position for the 250.
Both tactics are very good. You want to use these duels to get a bit of some practice in racing in a proper pack in an actual race conditions. At the same time, you also want to use this duel, though, to maybe make some of those more aggressive moves, see how they work out now. So if you do make it in to the 250, you know what works and what doesn't right out of the gates. You can go into those 100 laps already with your feet running and potentially see if you can maybe work yourself out, put yourself in position for a race win.
The new era in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, and we are happy to have you with us for another fantastic year of racing here on RaceSpotTV. The pace cars down and in, Agnew Phillips in control. Let's go racing in duel number 1.
And Wetmore clears for the race lead into turn number 1. Agnew Phillip going to take the second position now. Your pole sitter and driver that's going to be starting on pole position for the Daytona 250 going to be given a push now to the number 51 Chevrolet down the back straightaway. Now Phillip jumps to the high side, wanted to take away a Duel 1 victory, but one of the drivers fighting it out behind him.
And Agnew Phillip launches back to the race lead with the nose in front. He should have a run off of turn 4 here. And just like that, he clears Wetmore, who led the opening lap of this race. Now a lap lead goes to Phillip. He will bring Tim Johnson with them. They will both sidestep down to the inside line. And that leaves the number 29 of a shade of Chris Rabel leading on the outside in his Ford Mustang GT Nolan last year with the Gen 6 cars on restarts at plate tracks. We saw drivers very quickly dive to the bottom lane. We have not seen that early. The outside has been pretty good.
I have to say, I've been very, very surprised and pleasantly surprised at just how well that outside line has done. Of course, ever since iRacing introduced the 670 horsepower package, I have not been present to see any super speedway races play out, but I knew what they were like in the old package, and it was very reminiscent of what the Gen 6 cars drove as. Seems not to be the case, and in fact, the type of race we're seeing right now, it reminds me of the Gen 6 racing at old, and if you want to look into more modern times, I'd say this is most similar to how the 250 cars run. The top line is where you want to be if you want to make up spots.
You can already see some separation. This large lead pack that has 6 rows of side-by-side racing at the front of it includes all of the drivers first through 18th position. Then there's a secondary pack 4 seconds back. Shane Parrish, Tom Morano, James Ross, and Sean Kalist, 19th through 22nd, are all running off of this lead pack. And then Matt Danson, I talked about Danson not taking to the grid in this race. Nolan thinking that maybe that was going to be an intentional decision to start for the pit lane. Danson unable to take to the green flag at all. So he is already 3 laps down. That means everybody on track will be good. The only way you could mess it up is if there's an accident and then Danson's able to get onto the track later. But at the moment, all cars on the racetrack would be qualified for the Daytona 250.
And I think that is going to be a bit of a sigh of relief for a lot of the guys here in this field. It means they don't have to push it just as hard, but with how this league keeps swapping back and forth between Phillip and Rabel, I have a feeling that they haven't quite figured that out yet, and they haven't quite gotten the message. I know Philip, of course, already is feeling very safe, but like I said, I think Philip is taking the strategy that I would take. Figure out what works, what doesn't. He is trying to see how the moves, like what kind of moves he can make to push your way a bit further up into the race lead, how aggressive he can be, especially early on here. You're on board with Rhett McBride. He's got a big he's got a heads-up view on what's going on right in the middle of your leading pack at the moment.
There's the view from McBride, 6th in line. That means 3rd of the drivers up on the outside line of the racetrack as his number 15 machine picks up spots steadily after he started this race back in position number 10. Basically, every time a new leader's come for the outside, he's just moved himself up a spot, and that's why he's in a good position right now on lap number 6 of 30. Of course, don't forget that this is just the first of 2 duel races this afternoon. When these 30 are done, we'll re-rack them and stack them. The second half of the field will go racing in duel number 2. And you can see just on that background shot there, that 4 pack of cars dropping further and further behind. Now 6.5 seconds off of the lead pack. 4 cars will not, Nolan, compete with 18 cars when it comes to speed in a pack. And some may question what the speed is going to be like on a plate track in these next-gen cars. Pretty steady at about 187, 188 top speed into the corners.
And that is something that I find a bit interesting, is while these cars originally were supposed to be, the next really big thing, they are not as fast as the Gen 6 cars that we had at the start of 2021. Very specifically, they're on the 21 part, at the end of 2021, obviously, as we all very well know, the cars have slowed down significantly to the point where, with this new 670 horsepower package, I have to be honest, Evan, I don't see us realistically breaking any track records this year from the Gen 6 crew.
It just doesn't seem likely. I mean, there was a lot of talk about the package, most notably, Nolan, the 4-time defending Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series champion Andrew Freenosh talking about how he was unsure if he would contest the Cup Series this year with the change to these next-gen cars. The plan seemingly was 550 horsepower package at all the racetracks. However, it was a late decision by NASCAR in the fall to say 670 would be used at the smaller racetracks, even at the intermediate racetracks. I think still at this plate track package, you're at a lower number, but it was obviously enough for Andrew Freenosh to decide that he wants to contest the RSR Cup Series Championship, looking for a 5th in a row this year. Kevin King is here. All of the heavy hitters have come to play in 2022 despite all those questions. On board with Joseph Tice, he's pretty calm right now, back in line on row 2. As towards the front, Tom Wetmore will get pushed to the race lead by Dylan Parker. But Parker in the 3 machine might just lead the lap. He's got all the momentum up top.
There has so far not been a single lap of this opening duel where we haven't seen 2 double file at least 4 or 5 rows deep, and that is the type of super speedway that I love to see. This is such a breath of fresh air, as compared to some of the races that we were seeing towards the end of last year with the Gen 6 cars, where it was just single file drafting trains. That's what we were thinking originally that this season opener and these duels was going to be looking like as well. That's what they would have been had this race taken place even just 1 month ago. But of course, this new package, whatever they've done, while it might be at a lower horsepower than 670, whatever they've done aerodynamically wise with these next gen cars, I'd say if you wanted to up the competitiveness of the racing, it's clearly working.
You're on board with Sam Nieto, the driver of the number 2 machine for Flat Out Motorsports out of Gallipolis, Ohio. He is currently trying to push that 21 division Nick Cohan to the race lead. Looks like Cohan near to the bottom, but he will stick to the outside for the time being. I get that. I get the idea of a lot of drivers just wanting to hold the high side and lead, because the second you go low, somebody else is just going to step up to the plate and try to challenge you. So we'll see how long Cohan wants to hold the high side. The 2 machine in Nieto looking low. He will get joined by Manatzi Major. The 82 Sprite Chevrolet joins him, and now Cohan also makes a step down to the bottom, so the inside with an advantage by 3 car lengths. Major right back up to the outside, much to the detest of David Kolb, who wanted an opportunity to lead the lane for himself. Now Cohan brings the 2 back up, Nieto back low. Lots of blocking on the front row, 1/3 of the way through duel number 1.
And that is, I think, going to be one of the big worries for a lot of these drivers in this field, is all of that blocking that you have to do if you want to try to defend both lanes, which is something that these drivers very much have to do, because every time you jump down low, and even when you clear for the race lead, it creates a massive checkup on the inside line that runs like an accordion effect all the way back through, and it has the potential to cause some very, very big accidents very, very quickly. So these drivers have got to be very, very cautious of that, especially the other guy with Manatzi Major who tried to jump up to try to get a bit of a helping hand for the outside row, but they decide they don't want to work with you and jump up even further above you to take it 3 wide.
So far, so good. You can see, though, people getting more and more antsy, starting to think about positions. We've had a lot of big movers. Nick Cohan, who leads this race, is plus 11 from where he started. Sam Nieto in second is plus 12 from where he started. So lots of drivers, big gains in the start of duel number 1 here, trying to advance their position, trying to get themselves a better spot on the grid for the Daytona 250 in a couple of weeks' time. Manatzi Major leading the charge on the outside. The driver out of Orlando, Florida, once again driving for the Flying Arrows team this season. Manatzi was a new name on the RSR scene a couple of years back. Now, basically one of the vets, as he's back for another season, continues to improve year after year. But the 2-car of Nieto jumps up in front of him, so Manatzi is going to have to push Sam Nieto before he can take a look at the race lead himself.
Nieto, top shelf, going to try to take that one in his light number 2 Ford Mustang. Look for Major. Thought about going in and open up a 3rd line, but decided against it right at the last second. And still not even halfway through, and you already see a lot of these drivers making those very abrupt moves left and right, sometimes trying to break the draft, sometimes trying to just follow the guy in front, and that can create a bit of a zigzag effect that we've been seeing on both the lines so far throughout the duration of this race. As Nieto will clear for the race lead up top. Will he jump down, though, or will he stay up high to eventually try to drag the Sprite Chevrolet Manatzi Major with him entering turn 1? Nieto's going to stay true to the high line.
He's going to hold the top side, and the 21 machine of Nick Cohan was doing his very best to fill that gap underneath him, not even give him the option to go down there, at least don't give him time to think about it. And now that he's got the real estate, he slides down and drops back down to the inside line of this race. We've already seen 7 different drivers lead a lap so far in duel number 1. Manatzi Major wants to be the 8th different driver to lead a lap in 15 laps, and as he drops down to the inside, he will likely lead here at the end of lap number 15. David Cobb wants the challenge, won't get there in time. Give it to Major, and now David Cobb will go to the race lead in the 11 Toyota.
Look at how disorganized that entire inside lane got for a moment there with that very late move up to the top side, and now just exiting turn 2, they finally get themselves back sorted, but Cobb now takes the lead. Winemaster in second. Phil has been moving up to the top shelf. George has gone with them. You also have Wetmore and Tice also running the top shelf, with Dylan Parker trying to close in as well. Other than that, everybody else has faded to the inside line, and Dylan Parker is going to bail for the high side to the inside line as well, making it a 4-car charge from the top lane. Make it now 5 as Winemaster is going to go to the point. I think these duels is where we could, I think, encounter a very, very important question here. We've seen what racing we can have when both lines start to file, but is it still possible for 2 or 3 cars to open up a proper outside line charge like you could before they really altered the Gen 6 package?
Yeah, that was what we were talking about pre-race, right? When we were dealing with the delay and waiting for this duel number 1 to start was, what are these Gen 6 cars going to race like? It's funny, Nolan, this is their points, not a points race, but the first official race debut in RSR competition. But it's not like these next-gen cars are new to the service, right? We got these a long time ago, way back last year, and the physics on them have been continuously updated, of course. That change to the 670 package for intermediate and short tracks was made after they were released on iRacing, so the packages, the setups, and everything had to be updated here on the service as well. So there was a lot of changes that were made to these cars in that time. So we wondered, would these things race like a Gen 6? Would these race like they did 3 months ago? Right, when people had finally gotten used to how the next-gen cars supposedly drove. Oh, there's an issue! The 6 car gets turned! Thomas George in front of the field. The 21 car of Cohan is involved as well. And a caution in duel number 1. That came out of nowhere after Winemaster, I think, hooked the 6.
The only place that could have possibly come from. You saw the 6 car suddenly rip towards the outside line. That doesn't just happen by fluke. That happens if you get turned, and that would have to be a right rear quarter panel hook, I'd imagine, looking at the race spot replay, and sure enough, right into an unsuspecting Nick Cohen, who could have done nothing but avoid that. There is good news, though, for 2 groups of drivers in this field. The first group being the drivers that were collected in that incident. They're already secured because Matt Danson still is not taken to the racetrack. The other good news for the drivers 18th on back. You're looking at Parrish, Morano, Ross, Ewing, and Kalis. They had dropped off in the main pack. Well, now they got an opportunity to contend for a dual win again.
Yeah, now they're going to have to make a decision, right? Obviously, they intentionally dropped to the back, Nolan, but I feel like that decision to drop back was made thinking or assuming that Matt Danson was going to be in the field, right? With one driver going home and maybe he starting from the pit lane. Now that they know Danson isn't here, they've all completed 19 laps. There's no way that Matt Danson can pass them. So Matt Danson will not qualify for the Daytona 250. Everybody in this race is locked in. Now they need to decide, right? Because there is no longer that risk of being eliminated, do we go up there and race? And I say, why not? I mean, a lot of drivers were trying to encourage one another there, Nolan, to take it easy. Let's not wreck, roll in an advancing position. I don't think some of them know that Danson is so significantly far behind that maybe some of them still don't know that they're all locked in as they run. As we see a heavy contingent of drivers led by Winemaster come to the pit lane towards the back of the field, likely just to get some fresh tires. Fuel, not a concern. So definitely I agree with you. We'll see if the strategy changes for those bottom 4. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Every driver that came down pit road except for James Ross and Sean Kalis did have significant damage from that incident, and I have a feeling that, well, I don't have a feeling, I can actually tell you right off the top of my head as we look at the replay of one, Timothy Johnson for Disney Motorsports, that wow, the arrows on these cars are so much different as, oh boy, just step on it. Does he actually save that car? He does, takes it for a bit of a lawnmower excursion across the bus stop chicane on the back straightaway, but beautiful driving there for Timothy Johnston. But going back to what I was mentioning before, I have a feeling that these cars, while the arrow is so much different, a little bit of damage can still be completely detrimental to your race. So if there is a single speck of damage on your car, you got to get that fixed ASAP.
It is tough, and again, we mentioned earlier, no quick repairs available. I always find it funny at Daytona, when you do a single lap run, aero is so critical. I mean, these teams trim these things out. Nolan, when they used to paint the cars, they would put extra layers of clear coat on it, right, to try to limit any bumps and differences in the decals. I mean, aero is so important. And then these are also the races where somebody can find success with a torn-up car, right, within reason. It's funny. So, yeah, try to get some of it fixed. I think obviously the main concern would be front-end damage on the race car, because front-end damage may cause engine issues and some other more severe problems. But if you can get some of the cosmetic stuff fixed up and get back there on track in a pack, you may still be able to hang, even if your car's not at 100%.
There's always going to be the potential to get yourself back into the fight as the lights go out on the iRacing safety car. And how about this? Agno Phillip taking the top line for the restart. I'm gonna be honest, while taking the outside line is not uncommon, a 1.5 miles on short tracks, of course, I did not expect to see that on the initial restart here, because you have to keep in mind that while the outside lane might be the fastest line around once you get up to speed, throughout turns 1 and 2 and potentially even 3 and 4, that inside line is just going to breeze right by.
Yeah, and that's the question, is we've seen that historically, and we'll see if that is true on this restart. You take a look at the people up front, most of them started on the inside lane, so they were odd-numbered starting spots for this race. But the outside wasn't awful the first time around. This restart will come with just 9 laps to go in duel number 1, so they may have a fighting chance. Of course, Agnew Phillips' only concern is himself. If he can get around and clear of Tom Wetmore's number 51 Chevrolet below him, get in line, he doesn't really care what happens to the rest of the field.
Constant thought processes that are constantly running through a lot of these drivers' heads, right? I mean, you have to always take into consideration just how the rest of the field is going to react around you when you get to a situation exactly like this one. And no doubt that's what's running through Wetmore's head. It's what's running through Agnew Phillips' head. It's running through everybody else's heads just in behind them, as the iRacing safety car will get set to pull us back down to pit road. And with 9 laps left to go in Duel 1, we got back to green flag racing from Daytona.
Pretty even in the run down to turn number 1, but now Tom Wetmore on the bottom gets a nose in front. He is clear for the race lead. Now, as momentum builds up, Agnew Phillip will get a run here at some point. He's got a great pusher behind him in the number 29 machine to Chris Rabel for Keeping It Real Esports. Certainly one of the teams that will contend mightily for the team championship here in 2022. They've got the 11 car there, but there's a lot of bumper touching in the corner. Wetmore goes to block. That's not a good call. The 5 of Tice goes under him, and Wetmore through the sucker hole in the third lane.
What did I tell you? It's going to work out blocking like that up until somebody decides they don't want to work with you. Well, Agnew Phillip decided he was going to be that somebody, as one car up at the outside wall. I think that was Daniel Eberhardt that just scraped the outside wall up to the turn number 1. His number 94 Mustang, he's trying to open up the top shelf. Look at the 90 car with the charge for the outside lane. Major gets abandoned in the middle line now as Eberhardt goes through.
Eberhardt goes through, and Manazzi Major now sinks like a rock. He's going to go even further than Wetmore did, because Wetmore was able to stop in 10th as the 6th placed car up on the outside line. Manazzi Major will fall all the way to 16th spot. Just like that. Now more 3 wide. Now it's the 11 of David Cobb that's going down through the middle.
Eberhardt's found a strategy, and he's looking to make it work. Look to the outside of Rabel in turn 1. He's trying to make this one work in the corners. Now Rabel gets trapped in the middle line, and Eberhardt, no doubt, is not going to stop here. Down to the inside of Agnew Phillip. Daniel Eberhardt's going to just breeze past everybody on the outside line, and just like that, Daniel Eberhardt, now being pushed by Freeners, will lead the outside lane, but not for long, as Kevin King comes up now to take advantage of that outside charge.
It worked so well, but eventually he lost all his momentum off of turn number 2 because he had nobody else to work with. The moves were good. They gained him spots, but at the end of the day, you still need some help. So he now on the back bumper. King goes into the outside wall. Spinning his Eberhardt. Wetmore is involved. A caution at 6 laps to go.
And Eberhardt was the only one that went all the way around in the midst of that one. That could have been so much worse than it actually ended up being. That could have easily taken out a good chunk of the field. Somehow, everybody managed to come down and miss him. I tell you what, one driver that's going to be thanking his lucky stars is going to be the likes of Chris Rabel, who just barely got out of that mess unscathed. About 5 or 6 cars actually have damaged. I'm looking at Cobb, Parrish, they have damage from checking up. Obviously, Tom Wetmore will have damage. Still
Image on the 90. Several other drivers get torn up in that one, and through all of that, Joseph Tice will lead on the border of an overtime restart. We will see if it happens. May also just be coming to a 2-lap to go restart inside of regulation. Well, we've talked so much tonight about Agnell Phillip, who secured the #1 starting spot for the Daytona 250 in front row qualifying and has been having a good showing here in Duel #1. We're dialed up with the driver of the 94 machine on the radio. Agnell, you got us?
Yeah, I got you.
Well, hey, first and foremost, congratulations, fastest of them all, and you are locked into the best starting spot in the show for the season opener in 2 weeks. Just tell us about that single car queue and what the key was.
Yeah, anybody who wants to look at the times can figure out kind of how I got there, but yeah, I knew I wanted to qualify, hopefully on the front row, because I didn't know how many people were going to show up, so I didn't want to leave anything to chance about missing the 250 in a couple weeks. So yeah, I tried to go as fast as I knew how. So that's pretty much it for that. This Duel has been fun. I've never drove these next gen cars in a plate race before, and this is fun.
I was going to say, the work part of the night is done because you worked yourself into the 250, and that's, step number 1. You don't need to contest this duel. You opted to, so now's the school part of the night. What are you learning in the 27 laps thus far? I mean, started off pretty good for you. You've led 9 of these laps. You got shuffled back there recently, but what are you learning about these next-gen cars at a plate track, and what are some of the differences compared to what we saw with the Gen 6 last year?
Yeah, I think the top definitely is a lot more powerful than it was before. It's hard to say. I don't think people are quite pushing as much as we'll see in a couple of weeks. Especially at the beginning of the race, I think people were kind of just trying not to wreck because only one person was gonna move out. But it could definitely really stall out the inside on the if you were on top. And right before that first caution, it really did look like we were about to just set up a single foul train at the top, which unless that seemed like that was kind of happening somewhat organically. So that was pretty cool to see, because that's what we see on Sundays in real life when we see that. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, the runs are huge. Side draft works. It's a blast, honestly, and just there's just so many variables. I don't know that I know everything there is to know about this yet, but I'm looking forward to learning more.
You get about at least 2 more laps to pick up some pointers, Agnell. Thanks for chatting with us, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Good luck.
Sounds good. Thanks, Evan.
Your pole sitter for the Daytona 250, Agnell Phillip, who qualified on a pole earlier tonight with a 50.537 lap time. He and Connor Horn, who put down a 50.555, are on row number 1 for the Daytona 250. Lights out on top of the iRacing official pace car. It is a green-white checker overtime restart for the end here in Duel number 1. Joseph Tice, Sam Nieto will be on the front row. The number 5 machine is in control, and much like we saw out of Agnell Phillip on the last one, opts to go to the outside line for this restart. Remember, with Matt Danson not making it to the grid, all the drivers in the field are locked in already to the Daytona 250, so maybe there's a little bit less fear that wrecking out would cause you to miss the show. All these drivers are racing for is grid position. Unless Agnell Phillip is the driver who wins this duel, the winner will end up 3rd on the grid for the season opener in 2 weeks' time. So pace car in this time. It is attempt number 1. Actually, it's going to end up being really attempt 1 of 4 because this will happen within regulations. We are not burning an official overtime restart attempt. Will come to take 2 laps to go. Pace car off and in. Front row, again, controlled by Tice and Nieto, Johnston, McBride, King, Freenosh, Wetmore, Cobb, Rabel, and Parrish inside of the top 10. Green flag flies. 2 laps to go in duel number 1.
That was a very early launch there from Joseph Tice. That'll allow Sam Nieto to close right in. But instead of jumping to the top shelf, Nieto is going to stick with Joseph Tice on the bottom side for now. So look out for Tim Johnson running the high side for the time being. That number 56 Toyota Camry is right now in, I would say, the best pop situation to go for a race win.
And the inside with a huge advantage. 4, 5 car lengths clear on the inside now. But the 11's going to go to the outside. So does the 88 of Andrew Freenosh. First time we have talked about the defending champ. He's 4th in line now. But it is still Joseph Tice leading Sam Nieto. They're 3 wide behind them. 1 lap to go in Daytona.
One more lap to go, and Freenosh is moving to the outside line, but David Strowman is going to go with him. Redmond, Bryan, Nieto, and Tice, the top 3 on the inside line, with Whitmore able to tucked in behind.
And here comes the 51 machine looking to the outside. Tom Wetmore needs some speed. The 11's also got some momentum. It's David Cobb, the 2-car Nieto. He'll go around to the race lead in 3. The 51 car, Tom Wetmore, looks high, looks low, he'll get spun. It takes the field out in turn number 4, and all who remains is Sam Nieto, who wins duel number 1 and secures P3 on the grid for the Daytona 250. Sam Nieto was in second, coming to the white flag. We saw several challenges by a handful of different drivers behind him. And I'll tell you what, both the 51 machine and the 11 had a real good look at winning this thing. Instead, they fight amongst themselves. Watch it here. To the outside goes Wetmore. He comes down just as the 11 machine of David Cobb was doing the same. They touched, and just look at that mess. Some of them able to limp home. The 51 still ends up in 5th position, but Sam Nieto is the story of the night because he wins his duel. And again, will secure himself a very, very good starting spot in the season opener when he comes to take the green flag in 2 weeks' time from the inside of row number 2 here at the World Center of Racing. Sam Nieto, another one of those guys who has been contesting in this Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series for many seasons. And the Miller Lite Ford Mustang GT is celebrating. And yeah, it's a virtual race. You don't got to save the engine or the race car. He's having a little bit of fun with it as he takes home the win here in duel number 1. So we'll take an opportunity to step aside. You see the full race results from this one. Nieto, McBride, Major, Parrish, and Wetmore, your top 5, with Parker, Windmaster, Johnston, George, and Eberhardt, the top 10. Behind them, Shane Ewing finishes 11th ahead of Ross, Tice, Phillip, and Cobb, your top 15, in fact, when it's all said and done. Kevin King, Sean Kalis, Chris Rabel, Tom Morano, Andrew Freenosh, the top 20. Third page, Cody Harris advances. Nick Cohan advances despite being a DNF. And it is Matt Danson who will not qualify for the Daytona 250. We'll step aside to clean up Daytona International Speedway, and when we come back, duel number 2 is next. You're watching continuing coverage of the 2022 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series from Daytona on RaceSpotTV.
gon' fight, well that's cool, we gon' see. Their shoes look fire, but they getting cold feet. Man, I'm all in when it comes to those drinks. Cause I ain't worried about what somebody gon' think. And I ain't worried about what somebody gon' see. Nothing y'all can do, y'all cannot control me. Brainstorm, y'all minds got a slow leak. Brainwaves crash, this is getting so deep. Everybody, every time I go speak, don't believe the hype, then it's what you gon' see. I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. There's no stopping us now. I can't be controlled. Cause we're not in the crowd. I can't be controlled. You can't stop us right now. I can't be controlled. No, I can't be controlled. If I don't wanna be there, then it's time for me to go. Money is the motor, so if y'all don't even know there's nothing you can do to buy me, y'all are finally exposed. Hold up, man, you know that I'm honestly the GOAT. And I'm all good like I'm trying to be the Pope. If you talking money, then it's gotta be a joke. But if the money talks, I estimate it's gotta be a quote. Oh my God, man, you can't lie to me, I'll know. So really, if you try it, then you gotta be exposed. Headstrong, even when my mind is getting old. But even so, you need to know that no, I can't be controlled.
And back live from iRacing's virtual Daytona International Speedway as qualifying night continues on RaceSpotTV. We are 2 weeks away from the season opener of the 2022 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series season, and Duel number 1 is already in the books. We've already seen the likes of Agnew Phillip and Connor Horn secure row number 1. We just saw in a race win in Duel number 1, third in the Daytona 250, be locked up courtesy of a win by Sam Nieto. Up next, Duel number 2, where the rest of the field will have to try to fight their way in Nolan. Now, issues with Matt Danson at Heat Race, or not Heat Race, but Duel number 1 essentially, meant that everybody who took to the green flag in that one would make the show. There wasn't a lot of drama, which would have been huge given all the late race accidents we saw. That is not the case here in Duel number 2. Now, Connor Horn, who is locked onto the front row, has opted not to race in this race. He is unaffected by that. He'll still start second in the Daytona 250. 250. So we will have 21 cars racing for 20 spots. So as it sits, one driver going home as qualifying is underway for Duel 2.
And this, of course, means that these drivers are not going to have that one little wild card in the mix to kind of throw things a bit into chaos when it comes down to getting down to green flag racing. These drivers are only going to have to worry about one thing and one thing only. That is going to be everybody else around them. So I guess I should say more like another 20 things apart from yourselves as well, right? I mean, you got 21 drivers on the field and only 20 spots up for grabs. That means this could prove to be a one heck of a fight to see who could potentially break out of that lowest spot on the grid.
Certainly is the case. Of course, you're taking a look in at the field of drivers now. A lot of heavy hitters in this one. There's a look at the all-new look for the number 92 car of Liam Sheen, driving for the team this season. The driver out of Paddock Lake, Wisconsin. He has a lot of big team names. I can't even talk, Lonely. He's got teammates on the team. Try that as that 5 times fast. It's just completely rubberized my tongue trying to get that one out. But he's got a lot of really good teammates on the team, the likes of Daniel Eberhardt and others. So that is certainly a powerhouse team, I think, to keep a look on tonight. He's just coasting around, though. I don't think he's too worried about putting down a burner here in qualifying. We saw at least 4 drivers opt to not take a time in qualifying in Duel number 1. They intentionally started towards the rear. I assume that's what we're seeing out of the 92 here.
Well, if that's the case, why don't just sit in pit stalls? I wonder, maybe
I don't know, it's boring. Who knows? I don't know.
I'm thinking maybe he wants to set a time, but he just wants to be at the back of the guys that set the times.
Well, while we watch qualifying, let's see if we can get a word with our Duel number 1 winner. Sam Nieto took home the checkered flag and will bring us to the green flag in the Daytona 250 from 3rd position. Sam, you with us?
I'm here.
Well, hey, congrats on a good finish in that one. I know it's been a little bit of a weird night, but you guys came and showed up and got the job done. Tell us how Duel number 1 went. First time we've seen these next-gen cars in a plate track here in RSR on a Monday night.
Yeah, it was a really weird race. You know, coming into it kind of blind, don't have hardly any draft practice in these cars, don't know what to expect. And the weird part for me was, like, I was nervous for this race, and I don't really get nervous for these races, but you know, one car is going home, and I didn't want to be that car. But yeah, so I was just, you know, trying to stay out of trouble. I wasn't trying to push anybody hard. I didn't want to turn anybody. I didn't want to get damaged. So I just wanted to make it through in one piece, and you know, it worked out.
We talked with Agnell a little bit about some of the differences. He noticed that was his first time in a Gen 7 car here on a plate track. You know, obviously the packages change. We saw so many different draft models and packages with the Gen 6. So not to generalize it as a whole, but, you know, compared to what we saw last year, what were some of the differences, positive or negative, and maybe even the learning curves that you think are going to be a thing that drivers will have to deal with these next-gen cars at a plate track specifically?
Yeah, it's much different than last year. Last year, you just, you know, right around. You could maybe get a run every once in a while, but you couldn't do anything with it. You had to stay in line where you were. It's kind of where you were going to finish, unless you got ballsy and tried to make a move. Then you were going to finish behind that spot. But this package, you know, going back to the package before last year's package, you know, it was better. Last year's package, the 2 lines would kind of equalize out. This package, they don't really equalize out. If whatever line is more organized and is faster is going to move forward.
Taking a live look in as Michael Araya brings his car down to the pit lane. About 40 seconds left in qualified before we get underway here. What's the next couple of weeks going to be like for you, Sam? I mean, you're going to watch Duel number 2 here, try to learn some stuff. You're going to run some official. What more can you do to prepare for that 250?
Yeah, I'm gonna watch my flat out boys. Hopefully we can make it a sweep tonight. I don't know what I can do to prepare. I got a league race to run, a shootout to run tomorrow at Daytona, so that's a little bit more seat time. But I try to stay away from official. I think I'll probably get worse trying to run those.
We're looking forward to seeing how it goes out for you again, Sam. Congratulations on the win in Duel number 1. Best of luck in the 250, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
The driver that'll start from third in the Daytona 250 in a couple of weeks' time, Duel #1 winner, Sam Nieto. We'll try to talk with some more drivers as the night goes on, but qualifying is done. Let's go trackside. Take a look at your starting grid. This is Duel #2. The pole position for this one, it goes to Dane Cruz, a 50.090. He will bring us to the green flag alongside James Pasquarella in second. Michael J. Johnson and Anthony DeBarro will double up at row #2, ahead of Brandon 6 and Brandon Bowie 5 and 6.
And that'll put Nick Silver in 7th place with the likes of Ross Cano down in 8th. David Washington is 9th. Braden Whitaker is 10th with Michael Kuczynski going to be in the 11th position, and Josh Ball down at 12th.
Continuing on through 13th position on the grid goes to Sean DeCasso. He's ahead of Michael Araya in 14th. Bradley Burke is 15th with Eric Stanford 16th. Kyle Kamer will start 17th tonight, and Chris Edwards from 18th.
That'll put Liam Sheen down in 19th place with Brian Chambliss in 20th. Grant Davis and William Schmidt both not setting times, lining up on row number 11 in 21st and 24th. 21st and 22nd, I should say.
Look at the bottom at your starting grid for Duel #2. Of course, as the field rolls off, we talked about it in the earlier duel, but tell us more again, Nolan, as we get set to go racing about this Daytona International Speedway.
It's going to be a relatively entertaining Duel #2, I think, is the best thing we could say, especially if you take into consideration on what exactly transpired throughout all of Duel 1, especially that finish. I mean, my goodness, what a way to decide third place for the Daytona 250. But there is still, of course, one more race left to be had, and that is going to be what we're going to be taking place here tonight, with another 30 laps of racing actually getting underway. And I think if the first duel is anything to go by, Duel 2 is going to be just as, if not more, intense.
Certainly will be, as the field rolls now off of the corner. A lot of drivers are going to be feeling the pressure, but you heard it there from our Duel #1 winner, Nolan. Even though they knew that it was unlikely that dancing was going to be a thing, even that one driver getting sent home was enough to spook him. So curious to see, how the nerves are for these drivers. Normally, you can't really think about knockout Q because you just run a Q lap. That's it. But certainly in these races, you have a lot more time to think about it.
And the fact that you have a lot more time to think about it means one of two things. Either one, these drivers are going to be a little bit more sensible, not take as many risks as you might say in a much shorter sprint race, or they come in the opposite. They're going to be thinking about how they can be more aggressive. And considering the type of race we usually get in real sim racing competition, I'm willing to bet it's the latter.
Race car down and in this time. Happy that you're still with us here on RaceSpotTV. Green flag flies. We're racing in Duel #2. Lap #1 in the books, James Pasquarella to the lead from the outside. So the outside better than the bottom here to kick off Duel #2. They have about a 2-car length advantage with Anthony DeBarro sitting second. They hold the outside for now as Dane Cruz tries to make up for lost ground down low.
So far, that inside lane has not been able to get sorted at all. Brandon 6 in the 66 car, who started 6th, has so far been slipping a little bit further back. He checked up the inside lane through the tri-oval, and that is what gave the inside lane that massive run coming into turn #1. This time by those 6s jumped to the top shelf out of turn numbers 3 and 4, making it a 5-car length battle now for the race lead on the top lane, and so far nobody has an option to go down low. Now, interestingly enough, right, a lot of the dual races that I have seen in the past have seen that outside lane being the only lane that drivers opt to run. Is it possible that we can actually see that taking place on the iRacing scene as well here, as the outside lane gets a huge checkup now? Well, looks like I just shot myself in the foot with that sentence.
Wasn't it funny, because when you go single file on the sim, it's mostly on the bottom. Is what a shot Dane Cruz gave to Anthony DeBarro. It shoves that 27 way out in front, but it just about wiped him out down the back straightaway. But you're right, single file on the sim has historically been on the bottom, but anytime you see single file at a Daytona 250, it's cars up against the outside wall, because they go up there, tuck up against the fence. It's just a little bit better aerodynamically. I've seen it sometimes on the sim, not very frequently though, so that's certainly interesting.
Why do you think that is? Because, I mean, it's such an interesting dynamic. You'd think if, you know, drivers are trying to take inspiration from the real world, they would try to mimic the real world strategies too, right?
I think it's trust, because when you're up on the outside, Nolan, it can be anybody who goes down to the bottom, right? And, I mean, it's just begging for somebody to go down to the inside. In the Cup Series, you're going to see that, but there's a lot more alliances in the Cup Series, right? A guy's not going to jump at a line from 5th up top, go to the bottom, and not everyone's going to go with him out of, you know, no reason, because there's so many team alliances, and manufacturers also really try to coordinate and orchestrate things. You don't have that on the sim. So if you're leaving the bottom open, I don't think these guys are patient enough and trust each other enough for nobody to go down to the bottom. And look at Dane Cruz here. Can't find a home, so the 39 of Michael Johnson goes under him. The 12 of Ross Cato goes above him. And now looking for the race lead is Brandon Bowie. He tries to go down to the inside for the race lead. Look at the 12 car from the fence to the yellow line, as Ross Cato now challenges for third.
And interestingly enough, Ross Cato downshifted his number 12 machine into the 4th gear. That is almost unheard of at Daytona Super Speedway. It's typically a question of, do you want to stick at the top of 4th or the bottom of 5th? Looks like, though, he has opted to stay in the 4th and 5th gears. And the same story for Michael Johnson, just tucked in behind him as well. You've got so many drivers that are trying to balance so many various aspects all at the same time. And it is providing for one heck of a show here tonight. I would say more entertaining than you'd find in the real world duels.
And we'll see what the complexion of this race is like compared to the other one. The 4 cars hitting the eject button. Nick Silver doesn't like what he sees. He is dropping to the rear. Remember, 21 cars starting this race, Nolan. It's worth noting, we mentioned Grant Davis was going to be a starter in this race. He was removed because he did not participate in that front row qualifying. You need to participate in that in order to be assigned a duel, so he was removed. So the number is still 21 cars fighting for 20 positions. Oh, and nearly a wreck there with the 27.
Talk about a save, and DeBarro showing no fear, getting right back up with James Pasquarello, the driver that just hooked him towards the bottom side.
Well, I mentioned complexion of this race because things were very calm at the start of Duel 1. You had a large lead pack, you had a secondary pack of drivers dropping back and staying out of it. And then later it started to get ramped up, but it is everybody, no holds bar early here in duel number 2. And Nolan, not to take away from the excitement up front, but Nick Silver is in trouble. He is that 21st positioned car. We just saw him jump out of line, I think intentionally trying to go to the rear of this pack, but he slowed down too much. Look at him way back there. Nick Silver has lost the draft and is on the outside looking in right now.
And that is the very big risk factor long term when it comes to bailing out of the field exactly like he did. Yes, it's good in the short term, maybe, but however, it can be detrimental to you in the long term. And he's not the only one. The likes of William Schmidt also about to lose time as the inside lane has another very severe check up the 27 of DeBarro. Gonna push right back front with Brandon Bowie and try to get that inside lane going again. But so far, the outside still has a lot more order, I would say, than the inside lane. Look at everything nice and settled along the top side, the inside, not so much. Got a lot more gaps, a lot more drivers kind of wriggling around just a little bit, poking the nose out. Maybe wanted to make looks to get towards the top side. And Pasquarella having some issues, shall we say, in his number 39 Ford Mustang. That, no doubt, can't feel good to the guys behind, like Pasquarella, who are trying to push Johnson. As look at this, Brandon Bowie now gonna abandon the borrow and go to the point.
You know, what a drive for the 34 car. He goes down to the bottom, and DeBarro's going to go for the race lead to third or fourth within about 5-10 seconds. Bowie brings Johnson, Cato, Washington with him. DeBarro now passed by Cruz, and it'll be a second lap led for the Battle Beaver number 34 machine of Brandon Bowie. Bowie competing this year for Keep It Real Esports number 1. They got so many drivers, Nolan. They are contesting 2 teams in this 2022 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, because teams are now limited to 5 cars in order to better make that team championship competitive. So Keep It Real's got 2 cars. XPM has got 2 cars. They've got a Whiskey and a Tango team. So some of those big teams have been divvied up. They'll still work together as a whole on the racetrack, but they'll actually be competing against one another. And a spinner! James Pasquarella gets turned. 3-4 cars involved, and a big wreck in 3 and 4 for an early first caution at the 1/3 marker.
And that is about half of your Duel 1 field. And you saw just at the tail end of the shot, there was William Schmidt with Nick Silver not far behind. This caution was their saving grace, as it has put the 79 and the 4 back into contention for a Duel 2 victory.
And it was very similar to how the first caution to fly came out in Duel number 1. Just a little bit of bumper hook, right? Not guys making big moves. Check it out. The 77's the meat in the sandwich. He gets pushed by 6 up to DeBarro. He has to lift as to not run over the 27. And then one more touch there from Brandon 6 sends Pasquarella around. There's also damage on the 52 machine. That's Sean Casto. I think the 95 car of Burke got damaged. Laria's 44 got damaged. The 30 was in it. I mean, the 04 got involved late. There's going to be a lot of damaged race cars limping and scrapping for that final transfer spot to make it into the 250 after about at least a half a dozen cars got some significant damage in that last touch.
And that is why they tend to say on the iRacing service, you cannot push in the corners. Not you should not, you cannot. Though I guess that's a good example why you shouldn't as well. Yes, you can bump in the corners in the real world. This is not the real world. It is at the end of the day a simulator, right? It is a game, and that does tend to make the, shall we say, the consequences of a bump like that a heck of a lot different, and with much more severe consequences for one's race outcome, it should be noted. As you see a lot of drivers coming in down pit road, every one of those, save for every single person in the pits at the moment collected in that incident, really goes to show the scale of drivers that were just wiped out. It really was exactly half the field collected.
And you look at all those cars on the pit road. Last time in Duel 1, we saw drivers come in really just to get a little bit fresher tires for a late race restart. These are all damage repairs. Pasquarella's there, Whitaker, Kaczynski, Casto, Laria, Burke, Stanford, Edwards, Sheen, Chambliss. Those are all of the drivers making extensive repairs under the yellow. They're basically going to try to get about 1 minute and 10 seconds here of repairs until this field led by the pace car comes by the front straightaway. Once the pace car comes around, they'll all be forced to drive off of the pit lane. And at some tracks, you can do that. Leave pit road and then pit again, right? Do it 2 or 3 times under yellow, because they'll essentially be 2.5 miles behind the field. This is it. You're going to try to get all the repairs you can now. When the pace car comes off of 4, you're going to have to take up, and then you're going to have to very quickly catch up because the restart's not that far away.
And now this is going to be crucial, right? How many of these drivers stay in pit road to go a lap down? A good number of people have decided to bail out. Those include Chris Edwards, Chambliss, Whitaker, Stanford, and Pasquarella. Michael Kaczynski, I can see, leaving pit road now. So is Liam Sheen, but they're cutting it awfully close. Sean Casto, he is out of his race car, and effectively that means he's going to be out of the race as he goes a lap down. Brandon Burke and Michael O'Reilly both still in their cars, but both also still have damage on their machines as well. So they're going to be having a bit of a rough time trying to get themselves back sorted with this. Now, for Sean Casto, I'm a bit surprised that the 152 car would have come down like that, because he didn't even have a lot of damage. He was among one of the guys who got damaged the least from that incident, yet he's the only one that isn't in his car anymore.
I'm not sure what happened with Casto. It appears to be, I mean, relatively minor right front damage, but you know, he did lose a lap. So did Michael Araya. So did Bradley Burke. Eric Stanford is also back down to the pit lane again this time. So there's going to be several drivers a lap down here getting repairs because Casto's out of the car and he may have to be attending to something outside of the rig. So a tricky situation there, but this is now going to show that this race in that final spot on who goes and who stays will be determined based on those damaged race cars that'll be fighting multiple laps off of the lead lap. So that's going to be a battle that we will have to continue to follow as this race works on. In the battle for the race win, though, again, the winner of duel number 2 here, because Connor Horn is not contesting it, will be 4th on the grid for the Daytona 250 in a couple of weeks' time. And we've still got a long ways to go with 17 laps left on the scoring pylon this time through. 34 machine of Brandon Bowie is the control car. Unlike what we saw in Duel 1, he wants the bottom for this restart. It'll put the 39 of Johnson to his outside. Pace car down and in. Green flag back in the air.
And already, just with that head-on shot, you can see just how much this field has been reduced to. It's not a big field as it was earlier on with Casto, Luraya, Burke, Kuczynski, all still in pit road, with Michael Kuczynski making a second trip down right as we took the green flag. The inside lane definitely has the upper hand. The outside has not gotten going. Michael Johnson was the former leader. That now falls to Anthony DeBarro, who jumped up to the top shelf with the likes of Kyle Kamer, and DeBarro will do whatever he can in that Toyota Camry to see if he can maybe retake that race lead.
He's doing everything he can, and DeBarro doesn't have any speed right now on the outside line. The outside slowing that time through the corner. The advantage on the bottom by 3. Bowie, Cato, Silver, all clear. Working on the inside line of the racetrack as they run now. We have had a handful of different leaders, but only 3 drivers have led a lap so far, Nolan. Last time at this same point in Duel 1, we had 8 different drivers who've already led a lap. So Bowie and DeBarro have been very comfortable up in the clean air and leading things here fully now under the lights and at night here at Daytona. The outside fighting back, though. They've got a lot of speed. DeBarro clocking 197 in the bump draft on the outside. Had a great shove by Kamer, and they are right back in the conversation.
An oddity of a speed, but a speed nonetheless. He did not dip below 191 all the way through 3 and 4, and he is continuing to try to apply the pressure on the race leaders to see if he can maybe get that 27 Toyota Camry just a little bit further up in front of your field here tonight. Just into the second half of the second duel at Daytona, but that run of 4 on the outside starting to fade to the back.
He is starting to slide further and further down, and his compatriots are trying to jump ship. Kamer wanted to go to the inside, couldn't do so. That gap was filled by William Schmidt, and look at the single file advantage the inside has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars. The outside has all but completely disintegrated now. Only DeBarro and Kamer remain. And here's the onboard look with Kamer. It's a lonely world on the outside.
And what this tells me is while you might be able to have a big group of cars make a bit of an easier time with the outside line than you were before, 2 cars or even 3 cars, still going to be no match for a big train on that inside line. And I think this type of racing that we're seeing right here, this is what we should be more accustomed to when it comes to the Daytona 250 in 2 weeks' time, right? Because of that constant double file frantic action, it's not going to last the whole race, is it? I mean, it's only going to take so long for drivers start to come to their senses and realize it is a long race, much longer than the 30-lap sprints we've got here tonight, right? So that means that drivers are going to be looking to potentially jump back in the line just that little bit sooner. As I say that, though, Michael Johnson has jumped back to the top side, and little by little, that outside lane started to make up ground again.
Yeah, they're going to need numbers, and like you said, it's not going to go forever, right? They'll get somebody who wants to move up. As you can see, the 77 of James Pasquarella is way off pace. I mean, he just went from the lead lap to 1 lap down, but if him, I'm concerned. I know that there's other drivers 2 laps behind me, but if he's that slow, that's a huge concern. Pasquarella is down 1 lap. Kuczynski is down 3. Casto, Lariah, Burke, all still stationary in pit road. All you got to do is get a lap in if you're one of those bottom 3 to get yourself out of that elimination spot. 12 laps to go now from the World Center of Racing. The outside doing everything they can to fight and claw their way back. It's still just Nabarro, Kamer, plus the 39 to Machida Michael Johnson who joined them, but here's where the impatience settles in. Brandon 6 looking to the outside of Dane Cruz for 4th, and now once you start to get a little bit of movement here, things are going to really open up.
The top 3 starting to slowly but surely break away. Bowie, Cato, Silver starting to pull a bit of a gap. Brandon 6, he's in no man's land at the moment. That outside lane started to use the side draft to drag the outside lane back, but because the guys up front got away, they're starting to stall out, and this is where that inside lane could break away, and the top 4 break away because they don't have side drafting to worry about up in front. You can just see Nabarro and the others losing time with every corner. They can just see the leaders slowly starting to slip away from them.
And they have the numbers, which is the key, so they can catch them if they could work together. But if they keep putting big slides and crossovers on each other, it's not going to happen. Kamer working very well with Anthony Nabarro here tonight. The number 27 machine of Anthony Nabarro for Disney Motorsports at about Bethel, Pennsylvania. Working with the 8 machine of Kyle Kamer, who represents SK Sim Racing out of Indianapolis, Indiana. So not teammates, but they are alliances on the racetrack, and Nabarro has caught those top 4. Looks like Kamer's going to go with him, so the 27 and the 8, loyal, maybe to a fault at times. It cost them a lot of spots early, but just like that, they're back in the conversation.
Top 3 now, once again broken away, but 6 still with it, and it looks like while they might be side drafting, gradually they're starting to reel them back in. And this is what we like to see, right? It's not like before where a 3-car breakaway only needed to get about 5-6 tenths on the field and then they'd be gone. They have been reeled back in, and now Brandon 6 looks set to try to challenge for the lead once again. This time coming by to 9 laps left to go as Johnson going to duck to the inside line, leaving Kamer and Nabarro to wave the flag on that outside lane all by their lonesome.
It's going to dwindle, they're going to fall, and then in 2 laps, they'll probably get a burst of speed and come back. It has been a push and pull effect for the drivers up top right now. The only reason they got back into it is because some drivers started going up, right, Brandon? 6 thought about it, a couple of other drivers, Michael Johnson have been up there with him as well. If that doesn't happen, if it's just those 2, I don't think they can do it. So they are going to rely on either someone going up top to help them, or the drivers on the bottom starting to infight amongst themselves. As again, James Pasquarella, who is very slow, gets lapped, but he really can't afford to get off of the racetrack or he may go home. It's worth noting, Sean Casto Nolan off of pit road and on the racetrack, 8 laps down. Michael Lariah off of pit road and onto the racetrack, 8 laps down. Bradley Burke is still on pit road, minus 10 right now. He is in the hot seat.
Certainly is, and that hot seat is not going anywhere soon. Look out for lap traffic, though. This could get dicey. Sheen's up the road, and the field has to scramble up high to get around the 66 car, who did not take what most lap traffic do at Daytona, which is go down below that yellow line. Though that being said, there is no rule that says that 6 has to go below the yellow line. It was up to the leaders to get around him, and they did just that nice with no further incidents. But the top 5 have broken away. Nabarro just now clears for 6.
I mean, there's landmines anywhere, right? I mean, Liam Sheen just got passed on the bottom, and then it was Michael Lariah up on the outside. So these race leaders are looking out for those landmines everywhere on the racetrack, and so far they've been able to avoid it, as again it's Nabarro just as he goes to the bottom, just as we thought maybe he was going to just tuck and line and ride right back to the outside. The DeBarro Sliders Toyota does not want to give up, but that was a bad call because his home on the bottom is gone. Gap filled by Chambliss, Schmidt, Ball, Washington. Is Kyle Kamer even going to pass him? Yes, he will. And that will drop that 27 to DeBarro all the way to the tail end of this line of cars that he has been mixing it up with all night long. That's your top 12, and he is at the back of it.
Kamer jumps high, though, and DeBarro's going to try to go with him. Thought about it, decided back to the bottom side. Josh Ball has gone to the outside lane, though, so potentially two more newer drivers on the outside line might have a chance. Looked on board with Ross Cato, currently sitting second place, and keeping it right tucked in behind, keeping it real, Brandon Bowie in his number 34 Toyota Camry. So far doing a solid job up in the front of this field, Ryan, for Bowie. He has been just keeping control of this race. He has not been he's been keeping predictable, right? He hasn't been making any erratic moves, and that's what he's got to do, right? He's been gradually logging away laps. But sooner or later, that white flag's going to drop, and you know all bets are off. And the one place you don't want to be once that white flag waves is in the race lead, because you're the driver that's at the most risk of losing that lead, especially it's only going to take one driver to cause you to lose it by jumping to the top side.
And 5 laps to go here under the Daytona night sky in Duel number 2. Of course, plenty more RSR action coming up. This is just the start of the 2022 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series campaign. The Clash at the LA Coliseum next Monday night. The season opening Daytona of 250 the week following on Monday, February the 21st. As always, here on RaceSpotTV. 4 laps to go now for Brandon Bowie, who has dominated Duel number 2 thus far, now leading 19 laps as Pasquarella lapped for a third time, holds the outside. Is it on factor? The outside, though, starting to form back up. Your top 5 cars single file. Behind them, though, watch for the 79 of William Schmidt. He leads the top side with Michael Johnson as they try to breathe some life into this battle for the race win.
A 5-mile-an-hour difference between the top side and the low side in the turns 3 and 4, but it was not enough for the outside lane to get properly formed up in the middle of the corners. It looks like that inside lane still holds supreme. DeBarro with a very late call to jump to the top side, but the outside lane did make a lot of speed when he was leading at 6, trying to force the engine. DeBarro doesn't want anything of it, but Brandon 6 is not going to give him the option. DeBarro, of course, to tuck in line to avoid Michael Kuczynski in his Extreme Performance Motorsports number 30 Chevrolet, and that's going to make it a 5-car charge on the outside lane. Is that enough to go for the race lead with 2.5 laps left to go?
Well, if that lap car is not there, I should say, he makes that move. I don't think he had any idea there was a slow car up on the outside. That's where your spotter needs to let you know it's good to make a move or it's not good to make a move. So dicey moments there amongst the race leaders inside of 3 laps to go. Now up towards the front of the field, Brandon Bowie comes through the tri-oval. Just 2 laps left from Daytona. Silver still working with him. Do the 4 and the 34 from Keeping It Real Esports stay together? They have Brandon 6 from the affiliated Keeping It Real Esports team number 2 in line. Can you do anything, Nolan, to break those 3 up?
It's going to be a very, very tough challenge, but not an impossible one. A lap and a half left to go, and I think Bowie made the right call there to jump to the top side and defend the run from the outside lane. But the question is, now that Nick Silver's right behind him, will he be able to do it again with 1 lap left to go?
White flag this time. They need to get to the flag for this one to be official, as Keeping It Real Esports has dominated. 1 lap to go from Daytona. Can Brandon Bowie close? He's got help from Silver and 6, but DeBarro still challenging on the outside.
It is not over yet, not by a long shot, and not if DeBarro has anything to say about it. Look out for Brandon 6, pushing up to the top side, but nobody goes with him. The outside's got the charge. DeBarro bails, he goes low, leaving Willie Schmidt now to the top side with Nick Silver pushing Brandon Bowie, trying to get his Keeping It Real teammate to a victory lane.
William Schmidt pushed by the number 39 machine behind Johnson. Gonna have a look at a turn 4. Bowie's got the lead, but Schmidt's got the momentum side by side. And William Schmidt steals the win in duel number 2 as they crash behind him. In the end, it is still a race win for Keeping It Real Esports, but it wasn't the trio who dominated, who got the job done after William Schmidt came from all the way back at 5 laps to go in 8th position to win it on the final lap.
A little bit of a bump there from Silver, that unsettled Bowie. I think that might have been what did Bowie in. If he could have been able to defend, just maybe, but the charge from Schmidt was too much for him to have been denied, and that means Schmidt will be starting on the 2nd row, outside line, up at 4th place for the Daytona 250 in 2 weeks' time.
What a drive for William Schmidt, the Keep It Real Esports driver out of Camarillo, California, leads only the final lap, and he is, as you mentioned, locked onto row number 2 in starting position number 4 for the Daytona 250, and I think he is stuck after the burnouts. He's able to roll it off the bank difference. Great job for William Schmidt. Great showing for Keeping It Real Esports, showing that both of their teams are going to be heavy players, not only in that team championship, which will be new to the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series this year, but of course, having a lot of their drivers in contention to fight for a championship on the driver's side in 2022. Let's take a look at your RSR full race results here from duel number 2. William Schmidt's margin of victory, 0.031 seconds as he gets the job done ahead of Brandon Bowie and ahead of Michael Johnson. But look at that, Keeping It Real Esports, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8 with Brandon 6 there. Great job for them. DeBarro ends up 5th with Ross Cato 6th. You've also got the likes of Josh Ball and David Washington, the top 10.
And that will put one Brian Chambliss down in 11th place with Kyle Kamer, the last driver, still on the lead lap with Brady Whitaker in 13th place. That will leave one Chris Edwards in 13th. Brady Whitaker 14th with William Sheen in 15th. Eric Stanford is 16th. James Pascarella 3 down in 18th place. The last driver running on track that was only 3 laps down. For there you've got Kuczynski, Casto, Lariah, Burke, and Davis to round out this field, which means that I believe that will mean that it'll be Bradley Burke who will not be making it to the main event.
That's correct. Bradley Burke, involved in that early race incident at about lap number 10, will be the one driver eliminated from this race. So a tough way for it to go. But Bradley Burke will not be racing when we go at it in the Daytona 250 in a couple of weeks' time. Really just an unfortunate way for his opening week to go, and certainly know that he'll be a competitive car when the season picks up in a couple of weeks' time. On the flip side of that is William Schmidt. The number 79 car led only the final lap in this race, and he is your winner of duel number 2. William, congratulations on the win, man. Tell us about that drive from back on the outskirts of the top 10 at 5 to go to take it home the win.
Well, in case the strategy wasn't super obvious already, we were just trying to lay back for the entire time. Then that first strike happened at a pretty good time because I had lost the draft, same with my teammate, and got back up there. We started around the middle of the pack, and I guess there was a separation between a couple packs, so it was man, crap, what's the word? Yeah, I can't think straight. This is awesome, but anyhow, with like 10 or so to go, we were doing pretty well towards the back end of the pack, and then I kind of realized, no, and if I'm going to make a move to try and win this thing, I'm going to do it now. So I hop up high and get one of my teammates to help me in the back. And I guess everything just kind of lined up perfectly towards the end, where I ended up being the first guy on the outside with a pretty big run off of 4, and ended up stealing it from my team owner.
We've been talking to everybody about these cars tonight, right, as we see a nice shot of you driving into the distance and poor Brandon barrel rolling after the finish of this race, right? I mean, compare this to the Cup package that we saw with the Gen 6 cars last year on the Super Speedways. What's different? What do you like? And what are some of the learning curves going to be as we race later into the year?
Honestly, like with the amount of super speedway package changes, I can't even pinpoint exactly the exact changes, but one of the biggest things with this package is the runs that you get, and the closing speed is insane. I mean, the runs that you get, especially up on the high side, it is like you are being shot out of a cannon. It is absolutely wild. So come the 250, definitely look for people on the outside, because that lane is going to be flying at some points.
What's the biggest takeaway from this? Was tonight about winning the duel because you really wanted to start fourth in the 250, or was tonight about winning the duel to learn these cars, to get out there in a pack? What's more valuable to you?
There was a couple things. One was obviously, get some experience being aggressive in these cars. They're a new thing. Not everybody has the exact pinpoint on how to drive these things entirely. So I figure if I can, drive aggressively, learn how these things work, I can get a little leg up over some of the other guys. And a little personal motive is last year I failed to make the 250. I got wrecked in my duels. So this is also just kind of like a comeback tour for me in a way. So definitely probably the best way it could have capped off.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing what you bring in your second season of competition in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. William, before we let you go, anybody you want to say hi to?
Obviously I want to say hi to all my teammates. The Keeping It Real Esports 1, 2, 3, 4 is pretty cool. And obviously, as well as all of our sponsors, team-wide, Circle B Diecast, Southern Creek Clothing, MRN, the Racing Network, Elwood Designs, Battle of Beaver, Race Labs, Century Communications, the High Banks Podcast, Loot Podcast, Boosted, and of course, Life of a Sim Racer, that is being created by Brandon Bowie. So, yeah, that is, I believe, all I got to thank.
I'll tell you what, we appreciate that you're back with us for another year, William. Congratulations on the win. Thanks for chatting, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
The race winner for duel number 2. So a lot of drivers walk away tonight winners. Nolan Agnew. Phillip wins the top spot in the grid based on that single car qualifying session. Connor Horn wins the front row lockout. He gets second. And then when it comes to the duel, Sam Nieto winning duel number 1. And now William Schmidt winning duel number 2. So a lot of drivers going to walk away happy, of course. A lot of drivers will also not walk away happy. Matt Danson eliminated from duel number 1. Bradley Burke eliminated here in duel number 2. And a couple of other drivers who were unable to make the qualifying session also won't be there. They'll have to wait a couple of weeks to try again.
They absolutely will. It'll be those few weeks that could potentially mean that a lot of these drivers might find themselves a little bit restless when we got it over into the first point where they're going to be able to have that second opportunity to prove themselves out there on the racetrack. And of course, before we get to the 250, there is, of course, still the Clash to look forward to at the LA Coliseum. And, well, I'll say it this way. That'll be an eventful race. I think it's worth noting. I mean, that has got to be probably the shortest track on the entirety of iRacing at this point in time, I'd imagine.
I mean, I probably wouldn't try to put these cup cars at any other quarter-mile track, but it's in the LA Coliseum, so why not, right? Looking forward to that one next time out as we go racing at the Clash. And then, of course, that's going to be a fun one, Nolan. It's probably going to be a little bit messy. I think that's good, right? Get it out your system, because it's all systems go on February the 21st when we start at Daytona. We'll talk a lot about this schedule as the year goes, right? Bristol Dirt's back. We're going in St. Louis to Gateway. We're going to another couple of excited racetracks to Nashville Super Speedway and others as you take a look at the 2022 Cup Series schedule. But it's the Clash first. Have some fun with it, and then it gets real, because Daytona on the 21st, the first race that pays a golden ticket into the playoffs.
It certainly will. Daytona is going to be a one heck of a way to start off the season. It'll be one of the ways that will be big to start the end of the season as well. From February all the way to August, bound to be one entertaining regular season. You've got exciting road courses like Road America coming up. You've got newer venues like the Nashville Super Speedway, Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway coming up in June. COTA is making its return. Of course, Talladega, always a classic here in NASCAR competition, not just exclusively to the Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series. That is bound to be an entertaining race as it is. Don't forget Michigan, going to be an entertaining race in of itself. Richmond, you got Martinsville, Fontana. I mentioned before, that is one of the races I'm looking forward to the most. Be one of my favorite personal tracks to race on the iRacing service. So much exciting action coming on up, and a whole year of racing that I am certainly looking forward to.
And you're not going to miss a moment of it if you stick with us here on RaceSpotTV on Monday nights. Until next time, though, that is it for us here from Daytona Beach. The grid is set for the season opener in 2 weeks' time. So on behalf of our entire team at RaceSpotTV and Real Sim Racing, and for your broadcast team tonight, for our producer downstairs, Hugo Luis, for Nolan Rempel, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate the 43 cars who have qualified for the Daytona 250. Before we go back, though, we're headed west to the virtual LA Coliseum for the Clash. We'll catch you next Monday night, February the 14th, from the City of Angels. That race and every race of the 2022 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series can be found exclusively here on RaceSpotTV. Till next time, good night from Daytona.